After my wife was struck by ball lightning, she became a translucent quantum entity. That day, a torrential downpour was hammering the city. Elena encountered that blue-white sphere right at the entrance of our subdivision. Now, she is neither a living person nor a ghost, but an existence that science cannot explain, invisible to the naked eye, undetectable by surveillance cameras, yet capable of appearing in my peripheral vision. Even more terrifying, I found a metal component etched with QSD-7 at the accident site, and the speed with which the military scrubbed the news was unnatural. I will forever remember that stormy evening, the rain slicing through the gray sky like silver needles. Elena was supposed to be home before 6, but it wasn't until 7:30 that my phone finally buzzed. "Caleb, I'm at the gate. Can you come get me? The rain is too heavy." Her voice was intermittent over the line, laced with static interference. "Hang tight, I'm coming." I grabbed an umbrella and rushed out. The entrance was deserted, only the street lamps casting wavering reflections in the puddles. I was just about to dial her back when I heard a scream. Turning around, I saw Elena standing in a clearing 20 yards away. She had no umbrella and was soaked to the bone. But that wasn't what froze my blood. Hovering in front of her was a blue-white sphere of light, about a foot in diameter, its surface rippling with strange waves. "Ball lightning. Don't move," I shouted, sprinting toward her, but I was too late. The sphere gently touched Elena's chest, followed by a blinding flash. I instinctively shut my eyes. When I opened them, the ball lightning was gone, and Elena, my wife, stood there, looking down at her own translucent hands. "Elena!" I rushed to her, reaching out to grab her shoulders, but my fingers passed right through her body, touching nothing. She looked up, her expression shifting from shock to confusion. "Caleb, I feel strange." Her voice resonated directly inside my mind, rather than traveling through the air. That's when I noticed the raindrops were passing through her body and hitting the ground, leaving no trace on her. "We need to get you to the ER." My voice trembled, sounding foreign to my own ears. Elena shook her head, a movement that looked eerily glitchy on her, like a video played in slow motion. "No, I don't feel pain, it's just..." She lifted a hand to touch her face, but her fingers passed through her cheek. "I can't touch myself." I forced myself to calm down. As a physics researcher, I understood what had happened better than anyone. Ball lightning, that phenomenon science still hadn't fully explained, had quantized my wife. She wasn't a traditional existence, nor was she complete nothingness. She was in a superposition state between the two. "Let's go home first." I took off my jacket to drape it over her, only to realize it was pointless. "I mean, can you walk?" Elena nodded, her body looking like a blurry hologram in the rain. As we walked home side by side, I kept checking for her with my peripheral vision. When I looked directly at her, she became transparent, but when I didn't focus on her, she seemed to regain solidity. This eerie property became even more apparent once we got inside. Elena wanted to change out of her wet clothes, only to find her fingers couldn't grasp anything. When I tried to help her remove her coat, the fabric fell right through her body to the floor, as if she were merely a projection. "Am I dead?" She stood before the bathroom mirror, but the glass reflected nothing. "No." I grabbed her shoulders, or rather, mimed the action. "Quantum state isn't death. It's just another form of existence. Theoretically, we can find a way to reverse it. My professional training told me the probability was infinitesimal, but in that moment, I was willing to believe any theory that gave Elena hope. That night, we discovered the first rule. When I didn't directly observe Elena, she could briefly materialize. I sat on the edge of the bed with my back to her and heard the rustling of the duvet. She had successfully gripped the corner of the blanket. "Caleb." Her voice suddenly sounded real, coming through the air instead of my head. "I can touch things." Excited, I spun around, but the instant my gaze landed on her, I watched her rapidly fade from a solid state back to quantum form. She looked at her hands, transparent once again, with frustration. "It's okay, we found a method." I forced myself to stay optimistic. As long as you aren't directly observed, you can maintain solidity. This discovery allowed us to pass a relatively normal first night. I slept facing away from her, listening to Elena's familiar breathing, pretending everything was normal. But when I couldn't resist turning to steal a glance, I saw only an empty pillow. She had vanished due to being observed. "I'm here." Her voice echoed in my mind, choked with suppressed sobs. "It's just, you can't see me." I reached out toward the sound, feeling nothing but cold air. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds. I opened my eyes and habitually looked at the pillow beside me. The mattress was slightly depressed where she lay, as if someone were there, but the naked eye saw nothing. Morning. Her voice sounded in my consciousness. I found some patterns. I kept my gaze slightly averted, watching via periphery. Elena's silhouette flickered, much clearer than when she was fully transparent. When I relax, materialization is easier to maintain, she explained. And a semi-translucent hand reached for the nightstand, gently touching the water glass. Amazingly, the glass shifted a few millimeters. My God, I gasped. You can affect the material world. Just a little bit. Her voice carried a smile, and I have to focus intensely. This discovery gave us a shred of hope. If Elena could learn to control her quantum state, maybe she could eventually return in normal. I immediately called in sick to the lab and began documenting her state changes. The next 72 hours were the most bizarre research experience of my life. My wife became my subject, and I had to record data without looking at her directly. We invented an indirect observation method. I pointed my phone camera at Elena, then watched the phone screen through a mirror. This circuitous observation seemed to dampen the observer effect, allowing her to maintain a semi-solid state for longer. According to the data I analyzed on the third night, your quantum stability is related to the observation intensity. Direct naked eye observation causes total collapse. Indirect observation has less impact, and when unobserved, you can fully materialize. Elena stood by the window, moonlight passing through her body onto the floor. So, when no one is around, I'm real? In a sense, yes. I walked over to her, deliberately looking at the trees outside. It's like the double-slit experiment in quantum mechanics. The act of observation itself affects the outcome. She was silent for a moment. Then what if no one ever observes me? The question tightened my chest. Theoretically, an unobserved quantum state could persist forever. But what did that mean for Elena? Eternal isolation? Becoming a ghost that only existed when she was alone? We'll find a solution, I promised again, knowing full well how difficult that would be. A week later, we adapted to this strange lifestyle. I learned to navigate the world through my peripheral vision, and Elena mastered the ability to manipulate small objects in her quantum state. She could gently turn book pages, or even pick up light items when my back was turned. But the most unsettling change was dietary. Elena no longer felt hunger or thirst. Being quantum, she didn't seem to require traditional metabolism. When I ate dinner, she would sit across from me with a symbolic place setting, but we both knew it was just to maintain a facade of normalcy. I missed the taste of coffee, she suddenly said one morning, watching me down a hot mug. The sentence stabbed me like a knife. Elena used to be a coffee fanatic. She needed a pour-over every morning to function. Now, even that simple joy was stripped away. I'll find a way to bring you back. I set down the mug, my voice firmer than I expected. I know a few colleagues in quantum physics. No. Elena's reaction was unusually intense. Don't tell anyone. Caleb, think about what would happen if the government or the military found out about me. I'd become a lab rat, locked away for the rest of my life. I fell silent. She was right. A human in a quantum state was priceless to science. But for Elena personally, it would be endless torture. At least let me look up some research. I compromised. Without revealing your condition. Elena nodded, her translucent fingers gently grazing the back of my hand. The closest comfort she could offer. I used my university library credentials to scour literature on ball lightning and quantum matter. Disturbingly, a third of the research papers from the last 5 years came from military-backed institutions, and they were all marked classified or restricted. Even stranger, inside a declassified archive, I found several cases similar to Elena's. People who vanished after encountering ball lightning, yet their relatives insisted they could still sense their presence. These cases were officially categorized as mass hysteria or PTSD. It wasn't an accident. I muttered, encrypting and saving the files. On my way home, I took a detour to the spot where Elena hit the lightning. The rain had long since washed away any traces, but my physicist's intuition told me the odds of ball lightning appearing at the entrance of a residential neighborhood were microscopic. They usually formed in open fields or near high-voltage lines. Just as I was about to leave, a glint of metal on the ground caught my eye. Crouching down, I found a microelectronic component, its serial number almost worn away, QSD7. This wasn't natural ball lightning, it was man-made. My blood ran cold. If the lightning was artificial, then Elena's accident wasn't an accident at all, but... what? An experiment? An attack? Either possibility meant we were in grave danger. I carefully wrapped the component in a tissue, ready to head home and tell Elena. But when I turned around, a man in a black trench coat was standing 15 feet away, watching me with a terrifyingly blank expression. Dr. Stone. His voice was disturbingly calm. Your wife's accident. Truly regrettable. My heart began to hammer. Who are you? Someone who can help. He took a step forward, and I instinctively stepped back. We know about Mrs. Stone's special condition. We have the resources to help her recover. What do you know? I asked guardedly. The man pulled a photo from his pocket. It showed a translucent figure standing in the corner of a room, exactly like Elena's current state. Quantum state humans aren't an isolated occurrence, Dr. Stone. We have a complete database and research facility. The image made my stomach churn. They didn't just know, they were systematically recording and studying this. Elena's fear was reality. Quantum humans were being used as test subjects. Stay away from us. I gritted my teeth, turning to leave. 72 hours, the man's voice drifted from behind me. Think it over, then call this number. If the deadline passes, we'll have to assume Mrs. Stone has voluntarily become a national security threat. A business card fluttered to my feet. It had only a phone number, no name, no agency logo. I walked away without looking back, but the man's words coiled around my thoughts like a viper. National security threat? Elena. She struggled to lift a cup of water. How could she threaten anyone? When I got home, I found Elena unusually excited. Caleb, I just fully materialized for 3 whole minutes. Ow! I forced a smile, temporarily burying the encounter with the stranger. Emotion. Her voice trembled with thrill. I realized that intense emotion can temporarily stabilize the quantum state. Just now, I thought about how awkward you were on our first date, and suddenly I could touch things. She demonstrated, focusing on a memory charged with strong feeling, then reaching for an apple on the coffee table. To my shock, her fingers actually made contact with the fruit for a moment before phasing through. That's amazing. I praised her genuinely, but then I remembered the man's threat, and my smile froze. Elena, sharp as ever, sensed the shift. What happened? I knew I couldn't lie to her, so I told her everything, including the mysterious QSD-7 component. Elena fell silent for a long time, her translucent body almost invisible in the sunlight. They want to turn me into a weapon. What? A quantum human can pass through any defense, Caleb, undetected, leaving no trace. The perfect spy or assassin. I hadn't considered that angle, but she was right. From a military perspective, a quantum human had horrifying potential. And if that component was indeed part of an artificial lightning generator, then Elena's quantization was likely part of a military program. We have to leave. I made the decision instantly. Go somewhere they can't find us. Where? Elena smiled beakerly. I have a feeling these people aren't easy to shake. I opened my laptop and pulled up a map. I have a college buddy who owns an abandoned weather station up in the Cascades. No network coverage, almost completely cut off. We can hide there temporarily and figure out your condition. Elena didn't respond immediately. When I turned to look at her, she was staring at our wedding photo on the wall, taken 3 years ago in Maui. Sun, sand, and her radiant smile. Everything looked so real, so material. What if? Her voice was so soft it was barely audible. What if I never go back to normal? I walked over to her, deliberately avoiding direct eye contact. Then we'll build a cabin in the mountains. You can materialize when no one is around and talk to me. I can learn Braille, so we can communicate when you're unobserved. Caleb, she interrupted, her semi-translucent hand gently stroking my cheek. I could almost feel a trace of warmth. You are a terrible liar. I grabbed her hand, or tried to, but touched only air. I'm not lying. Whatever state you're in, you are my wife. Elena suddenly vanished completely. Not the transparency of her quantum state, but gone. I looked around in panic. Elena. No answer. I realized what she was doing. She was testing her limits. If she could fully materialize and move while unobserved, then maybe she could leave. Elena. I shouted again, fear creeping into my voice. Don't do anything stupid. A minute later, she reappeared in my peripheral vision, looking exhausted but exhilarated. I could do it. Caleb, I just walked to the bedroom and back, fully solid. This discovery should have been joyous, but I felt only a chill. What are you planning? She looked straight into my eyes, something she rarely did now. As direct eye contact accelerated her collapse. I'm going to find them. What? No. I almost screamed. That's too dangerous. Listen to me. Her voice rang with abnormal clarity in my mind. If they can build ball lightning, they might have a way to reverse it. And she paused. If this really is a weapons test, there are more victims like me. We can't just sit here. I knew Elena's stubbornness. Once she decided, nothing could stop her. Quantumization hadn't changed that. At least wait until we know more. I compromised. Let me analyze the component first. Elena reluctantly agreed to the middle ground. I placed the QST-7 unit on my workbench and examined it under a microscope. The serial number pointed to a shell company called Quantum Solutions, but digging deeper, I found financial ties to a defense technology lab. Even more disturbing, I found a microtransmitter inside the component. It was still active, emitting a faint signal. They're tracking us, I told Elena. This thing has been broadcasting our location. Elena's face, if a quantum form could have a complexion, turned grave. Then we're out of time. Just then, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw two men in uniforms claiming to be from the power company, there to check abnormal voltage fluctuations. Too much of a coincidence, I whispered to Elena. Hide, don't make a sound. I opened the door to stall them, but they clearly weren't interested in the meter. Their eyes scanned the interior constantly. Dr. Stone, we've received reports of quantum radiation leakage in this area. For public safety, we need to scan your residence. Quantum radiation? The excuse confirmed my guess. They were here for her. My wife has been feeling unwell. I blocked the doorway. Come back another day. One of them suddenly pulled out a device, flashing with blue light. Abnormal readings. Right in this room. Before I could react, the other man forced his way in, holding a metallic disc device. When he pressed a button, the disc emitted a piercing hum. Elena, run! I shouted, lunging at him. But it was too late. Elena's translucent outline suddenly manifested in the air. The device had forced her quantum state to reveal itself. Target located, the man spoke into his comms. Prepare for extraction. I fought desperately, but was easily subdued. Elena tried to rush over to help, but a field emitted by the disc restricted her movement. Caleb, her scream echoed in my mind. In that critical moment, Elena's body suddenly fully materialized, not partially, but as solid flesh and blood. She grabbed a vase from the table and smashed it hard against the head of the man controlling the disc. He stumbled, dropping the device. Elena's solid form immediately began to destabilize, but she used those few seconds to yank the power cord from the disc. Caleb, go, she shouted, her voice no longer in my head, but ringing through the air from her own throat. I broke free from the grapple, grabbed the fallen disc, and smashed it into the other man's face. With both of them down, I dragged Elena toward the garage. Who are they? Elena gasped, her body flickering rapidly between solid and quantum states, looking like she was in agony. Don't know, but definitely not the power company. I started the car. Hang on, we're going to a safe place. Elena gripped the door handle, her knuckles white. That device, it almost fixed me in place. I realized the horror of the military's tech. They could not only detect quantum humans, but forcibly control their state. Elena had almost been captured, turning into a literal lab specimen. We sped toward the mountains, but the rearview mirror soon showed pursuing vehicles. Worse, Elena's condition was deteriorating, oscillating between fully solid and nearly vanishing. Caleb, her voice grew weak. I'm not sure how long I can hold on. I kept one hand on the wheel and reached out to her with the other. Focus. Remember those strong emotions. Elena nodded, closing her eyes. A few seconds later, her hand became solid in my palm. A real, warm touch, the first in 3 weeks. Remember our first date? She smiled, her voice trembling with the effort of maintaining mass. You were so nervous you spilled coffee on your pants. I squeezed her hand tight. I remember our wedding day. You in that white dress, looking so beautiful in the sunlight, it didn't seem real. Elena's body stabilized, but the pursuers were gaining. At a sharp bend, a black SUV suddenly shot out from a side road, ramming us hard. As the airbags deployed, I saw Elena fully quantized from the impact, drifting right through the car door. Our car rolled down the embankment, the world spinning. When everything stopped, I crawled out of the wreckage covered in blood. Elena stood nearby, her translucent body barely visible in the sun. Caleb, her voice screamed in my mind. You're bleeding. I'm okay. I stumbled toward her. We have to keep moving. Elena suddenly looked behind me, terrified. I turned to see 5 men in black emerging from the SUV, holding bizarre devices. Quantum target confirmed, the leader said. Prepare for capture. I stood in front of Elena. What did you do to her? You set off that ball lightning, didn't you? The man sneered. The QST series tests were a success. Mrs. Stone is the 7th stable quantum sample. Now step aside, unless you want to be the 8th. 7th. There were 6 victims before Elena. The confirmation filled me with rage and dread. Run, I whispered to Elena. While they're focused on me, run. No. Elena's voice was resolute. I won't leave you. To my shock, she stepped forward facing the man. You want a quantum human? Come and get me. With that, she suddenly bolted in the opposite direction. Not running on legs, but drifting in a quantum glide impossibly fast. Target moving. All units pursue. The team moved instantly, leaving only 2 men to guard me. I watched Elena draw away the main force, my heart breaking. She was sacrificing herself to give me a chance. But as I despaired, a strange detail caught my eye. The devices held by the remaining guards were different, looking more like emitters than capture tools. And they kept looking at the sky, waiting for something. I suddenly understood. This wasn't a chase. It was a herd. They wanted Elena to go in a specific direction. Elena, don't go west. I screamed, hoping she could hear me through quantum entanglement. It's a trap. The guards instantly alerted, one raising his weapon. Shut up. But it was too late. A piercing hum tore through the air from the distance, followed by a blue-white flash, identical to the ball lightning from that day. No. I broke free, sprinting madly toward the flash. When I stumbled into a clearing, I saw a sight I would never forget. Elena was trapped inside a hexagonal field generated by 6 machines, her body agonizingly shifting between states. Hovering in the center of the field was a miniature ball lightning, smaller than the one that hit her, but clearly controlled by the agents. Capture stable, a technician reported calmly. Preparing for state lock. Elena. I rushed forward, but was hit by a taser, collapsing to the ground in convulsions. Inside the quantum field, Elena saw me. Her expression shifted from pain to resolve. Just as the technician prepared to press a button, Elena did something no one predicted. She reached out and grabbed the miniature ball lightning. If you want a quantum sample, her voice suddenly transmitted through the air, loud and clear. Then take a look at this. The ball lightning exploded in her hand with blinding brilliance. When the light faded, Elena was gone, and all 6 machines in the field were melted slag. Target lost. The technician checked his instruments in panic. No, not lost. Diffused. The leader's face went pale. Retreat. Retreat immediately. They fled in chaos, leaving me kneeling alone in the center of the scorched clearing. Countless blue-white motes of light floated in the air, twinkling like miniature stars. I whispered. The lights danced gently, forming a familiar silhouette before dissipating into the atmosphere. But in that moment, I was certain I heard her response, not through sound nor thought, but a presence branded directly into the depths of my consciousness. I am here, Caleb. Everywhere. I knelt on the scorched earth, digging my fingers into the soil. The floating blue-white specks were fading, like dandelion seeds scattered by the wind. Elena's final form was gone, leaving only my tears dripping onto the burnt ground, hissing as they hit the heat. Elena. I called out again, my voice raspy and foreign. No answer. No gentle voice echoing in my mind. Only the mountain wind and the distant wail of sirens. The men in black had long fled, leaving behind melted equipment and footprints. Mechanically, I began collecting every shard, every piece of wreckage that could serve as evidence. My coat pocket still held the QSD-7 component. Now, it was the only material proof of Elena's existence. When the police and ambulances arrived, I had gathered everything I could. The officers expressed concern over my injuries and dazed state, but I refused the hospital. My wife. I started then stopped. How could I explain Elena's current state? That she was quantum? That she existed and didn't exist? They'd lock me in a psych ward. Sir, where is your wife? A female officer asked gently. I looked at her, realizing a terrible truth. Legally, Elena was dead. The first contact with ball lightning had killed her material form. For the past 3 weeks, I had been living with a quantum ghost, a phenomenon science couldn't explain. Gee, I took a deep breath. I need to call my lawyer. It was a stalling tactic. I needed time to think, to understand what Elena had done at the end, and what she was now. The police eventually dropped me home. A house filled with traces of Elena, but completely empty. I locked the door, drew the curtains, and dumped the collected debris onto the dining table. The QSD-7 unit, melted parts, photos I took with my phone, and the most precious item, a blurry video, footage of Elena's final moments. My fingers trembled as I pressed play. The quality was poor, but I could clearly see Elena in the center of the hexagonal field, flickering. When she spoke those last words, the audio didn't come from the phone microphone, but was recorded directly resonating in my brain. If you want a quantum sample, then take a look at this. Then she grabbed the sphere, and the light blew out the camera sensor. But right at the peak of the flash, I paused it, going frame by frame. In one frame, Elena's body seemed to decompose into countless points of light, and the arrangement of those points. I squinted, suddenly realizing it wasn't random. The lights formed a structure like a fractal pattern. I blurted out. As a physicist, I instantly understood the implication. Fractals are infinite geometric patterns found in nature, from fern leaves to coastlines. If Elena's quantum decomposition exhibited fractal characteristics, then her consciousness might not have disappeared but diffused, like a drop of ink falling into water, seemingly gone, but actually existing between every water molecule. The thought made my heart race. If Elena's quantum consciousness had truly dispersed in a fractal pattern, then theoretically, as long as I found the right receiver, I could re-aggregate her. But first, I needed more information on the military's quantum technology. The 7 stable sample comment meant there were more victims, and the QSD series had clearly undergone multiple tests. I opened my laptop and started digging into the shell company, Quantum Solutions. After 3 sleepless nights, I pieced together a horrifying truth. The military had started research on quantum state humans 5 years ago, codenamed Project Ether. The ball lightning Elena encountered wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was a precision-targeted quantum conversion weapon. Even more heinous, the files documented the fates of the first 6 volunteers. 3 vanished completely during quantization, 2 fell into permanent instability and were recycled, and only 1 achieved controllable quantum state, the translucent figure in the photo. And all of this was to develop an indefensible weapon, a quantum agent capable of penetrating any defense, assassinating any target, and vanishing like a ghost. Elena was the unplanned 7th case because the test was supposed to be for someone else. The documents showed my background as a physicist made me the ideal candidate, and Elena was just collateral damage for clearing social ties. Reading these words, my fingers trembled over the keyboard, my stomach churning with pure hatred. But rage wouldn't solve this. I needed a plan. Just then, something impossible happened. The fountain pen on my desk suddenly rolled, falling to the floor. I bent to pick it up, only to find it being pushed by some force, scratching marks into the wood. No, not random scratches, it was writing. I held my breath, watching the unheld pen slowly but firmly write a word. Here. Then Caleb. My heart nearly stopped. Elena. The pen quivered, then continued. Diffusion is not death. Need anchor. I understood immediately. Quantum Elena needed an anchor to focus her consciousness, just like observation equipment collapses a probability wave function. The pen moved because she was focusing part of her consciousness on it, but it consumed massive energy. What anchor? I asked urgently. How do I help you? The pen paused for a long time before writing. Our memories. Strong emotion. Stabilized quantum state. It clicked. This was why she could briefly materialize when recalling intense feelings. Emotion itself was an act of observation, of focusing of consciousness. I moved instantly, pulling our photo albums from the shelf, taking the wedding portrait off the wall, even digging out the blue dress she wore on our first date from the back of the closet. I arranged these items in a circle, sat in the center, and began to recall every significant moment we shared. Remember when we first met? Physics library, you checked out the copy of quantum field theory I needed. I closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me like a tide. Her smile on the campus sunlight, her laugh, and my clumsiness on our first date. The tears in her eyes the night I proposed. Blue-white specks of light began to appear in the air, sparse at first, then multiplying like fireflies on a summer night. They rotated slowly, gradually forming a blurry human silhouette. Caleb. This time, it wasn't the pen writing, but a voice sounding directly in my mind, faint but clear. I'm here, Elena. I whispered, afraid to open my eyes and break the fragile connection. I'm here. The figure made of light moved closer. I felt a breeze brush my cheek, carrying Elena's signature scent of gardenias. It wasn't a physical smell, but a memory perception projected directly into my consciousness. I see them. Elena's voice was intermittent. All the fragments. Other quantum people. They are lost. My chest tightened. There are others like you? 7. No more. Her voice carried pain. Trapped. Base. Sublevel 3. The military hadn't just created quantum humans. They were holding them prisoner. The discovery filled me with both fury and hope. If Elena could sense the other quantum entities, maybe... Elena, can you take me there? I asked. To the base. The lights fluctuated violently, and her voice grew anxious. Dangerous. They have collectors. Will capture me. I won't let them hurt you, I said firmly. But we need evidence. We need to expose this. The lights spun faster, seeming to think. Then, to my shock, Elena's hand, a semi-translucent hand made of light, gently touched my cheek. Not a physical touch, but a warmth that reached straight to the soul. Trust. She said just one word, and then the lights suddenly surged toward me, passing through my skin and merging into my body. In an instant, my vision shifted completely. I could see the room normally, but superimposed over it was another layer, the quantum world. Walls were no longer barriers. I could see the street behind them. The floor became transparent. I sensed the pipes underground. Most startlingly, on the distant horizon, there was a bright blue-white point of light, flashing like a lighthouse. Even miles away, I could clearly perceive its location and direction. The military's quantum research base. Elena was guiding me. I see it. Let's go. The next 72 hours were the wildest adventure of my life. With the quantum perception Elena gave me, I easily evaded all the base's security systems. She guided me through layers of defense to a nondescript industrial park on the edge of the city. On the surface, it was an electronics factory. Underground, it was a massive quantum research facility. Through the ventilation ducts, I infiltrated the core area, the sublevel 3 Elena had sensed. The sight before me froze my blood. Dozens of transparent, cylindrical containers lined the lab center, each holding a floating humanoid shadow. Some were nearly invisible, others clearer, but all were in suspended animation. Quantum stasis pods, the labels read. The military had captured these people and imprisoned them in jars like specimens. In the container nearest me, the quantum figure of a young woman floated, her outline blurrier than Elena's. The label read, QSD, for unstable, weak consciousness activity. These were living people, or they had been. Now their material bodies were gone, leaving only quantum consciousness trapped in cold machines. I whispered, are these people all like you? No answer. Since entering the base, Elena's presence had grown faint, as if some equipment here suppressed her quantum signal. I had to gather evidence before I was caught. My phone camera couldn't capture quantum images, but I found a professional scanner displaying the quantum field distribution. I quickly snapped photos of the data on the screen while downloading files from the main terminal. The transfer hit 87% when the alarms blared. Intruder alert, Sector B, Level 3. All security personnel respond immediately. I yanked the USB drive and turned to run, but the control room door automatically locked. Through the glass, I saw armed guards sprinting toward me. In desperation, I noticed a red button on the console labeled Emergency Protocol. Without time to think, I smashed the protective cover and slammed it. All the quantum stasis pods simultaneously emitted a piercing alarm. Then, the impossible happened. The quantum shadows inside the containers began to wake up. Their outlines sharpened. Their movements became active. System failure. A panicked voice came over the intercom. Quantum containment field failing. The guards forgot about me, rushing toward the mainframe. I used the chaos to pry open the maintenance hatch to the vents, but just as I was about to climb in, a familiar voice rang in my mind. Caleb, help! Us! It was Elena. But the voice didn't seem to come from inside me, but from those newly awakened quantum entities. I looked back. The shadows in the containers had broken their bonds, floating in the lab air. They know, because Elena was clearly among them, formed a strange quantum network. Go! Go! The voice sounded again, a chorus of multiple consciousnesses. We will hold them. Expose the truth. I knew they were creating a chance for me to escape. With a heavy heart and a USB drive full of evidence, I scrambled into the vent, listening to the sounds of chaos erupting in the lab behind me. Getting out of the base was a nightmare. Alarms, running footsteps, and shouting wove together. Several times, guards almost spotted me, but something always distracted them. The liberated quantum entities were helping me. When I finally burst out of the industrial park and disappeared into the city crowds, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. A month later, Congress held an emergency hearing on Project Ether. The evidence I provided, along with testimony from several whistleblowers who found their conscience, utterly exposed the anti-human quantum weapon program. The media dubbed it Quantum Gate, and public outrage spread like wildfire. High-ranking military officials were held accountable. The research was permanently banned, and those imprisoned quantum humans, now legally recognized as quantum consciousness entities, were granted special status. As for Elena and the others who had been quantized, the scientific community is still debating their exact state. But I know they're neither dead nor alive in the traditional sense. They exist in a completely new form. The night after the hearing ended, I sat alone on our balcony, looking up at the stars. A breeze blew past, carrying the familiar scent of gardenias. Elena. I called softly. No answer, but I wasn't anxious. I had learned a new way to communicate, not expecting a voice or an image, but feeling that subtle presence, that warmth projected directly into my consciousness. The wine glass on the table suddenly shifted a few inches, the moonlight refracting blue-white glints through the liquid. I smiled, raising my glass to the empty air for a toast. To quantum entanglement, I said. The wine in the glass rippled, as if invisible lips had taken a sip. In that moment, I knew Elena was there in her own way. Maybe one day science will find a way to bring her back completely. Maybe never, but it doesn't matter anymore. Because love, like a quantum state, never truly vanishes, nor can it be fully observed. It exists in every possible world, in every heartbeat, in every memory. And I, Caleb Stone, will spend the rest of my life studying this quantum love until my every atom is entangled with her imprint, until the end of the universe. Story complete.